Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in to the ATU Sports Corner. I am Brandon Moix, and we are going to be talking about March Madness. But before we get into that, I want to talk to my partner in crime here, Caden Hauser, about a little bit of an ailment he's dealing with. Caden, what's going on, man?
Well, if you can't tell by now, my voice is out. But we're gonna have a great show anyway. We're still gonna be giving out some great takes. Brandon is still blessed to have his voice, but I think I can manage, and it's not gonna be too bad. So my voice is, I'm not sick. I feel great. I feel fine. Just the voice is a little gone.
He's been calling a lot of baseball games lately, working that voice real hard, and he's having a tough time with it lately. He's been complaining about it a lot. It's been a whole ordeal the last week, but we will get right into the March Madness action because we have already had 8 NCAA tournament tickets punched. We're going to pull up the graphic here. We have the Long Island Sharks, fins up, have clinched a bid. Tennessee State, Northern Iowa out of the Missouri Valley, High Point, Queens, North Dakota State, Troy, and Furman all are going to be dancing. Caden, which of these teams catches your eye?
The team out of those 8 that have already made it, of course, the one that's going to catch my eye the most is going to be Northern Iowa. They have the best defense in college basketball statistically. They only give up 61.3 points per game. That's first in the nation. That's above Duke, and that's above Houston. And Trey Campbell is leading the way in scoring. He's averaging 13.7 points per game. He's been at Northern Iowa all 4 years of his career, and they seem unified whenever they play on the court. And what you need in tournament time, like I said last week, is defense, and they do that at a high level. These mid-major teams, they compete highly. They've been saying on the big shows this week on ESPN that mid-majors are done, Cinderellas are done, but when you have teams like Northern Iowa, teams like High Point, I think there's still a chance.
Yeah, Northern Iowa, very interesting case, 6th seed in their own conference tournament, but everyone knew they were a very talented team, capable of going on a run like this. A lot of that was because of that defense and also the pace they play, which really helps out that defense. They play a very slow, methodical pace, and they shot the ball really well from 3 in that conference tournament, so that is really what got them through there, and if they continue that, they can be very dangerous in March. But I think another team that also deserves quite a bit of love for their performance up to this point is High Point. The High Point Panthers have played at a super high level all year. I think they're going to be looking at a 12 or a 13 seed in the tournament. Terry Anderson's their leading scorer at 16 a night, but they're also just a really balanced offense. Rob Martin averages 15. Cameron Fletcher usually comes off the bench for them and is at almost 13 a game. One guy who's getting a lot of love lately is Chase Johnston, who is the little guard who shoots an absurd amount of threes. I believe he is 0 on the year from 2. A lot of people are giving him some Jack Golke comparisons, but he is someone who I expect to at least give us some fun moments once we get to the NCAA tournament.
0 for 4 is that total tally from 2.
Yeah.
0 for 4. But he's taken 132 threes and he's made 64 of them. We were talking about this the other day. His field goal percentage lower than his three-point percentage. I mean, you don't ever see that in college basketball. Exactly. Like Jack Golke wasn't even that bad. Or, well, not bad, just not field goal. He wasn't like that on his field goal percentage. But he only averages 6 points a game. He's not very dynamic. He doesn't really play a whole lot, but his stats pop. So he could be a potential tournament, just a spark. They could bring him in even if they're down or up. Just a guy that can make some noise for sure.
Yeah, well, we are going to move on to some tournaments that are here to come and being played currently. We're going to start off with the American Conference. This is one of the more interesting leagues we have going. South Florida is the one. They've been the one all year. They've gotten a lot of love, and on this show especially, Caden has talked very highly of them, Joe Pinion and those guys. But also Tulsa is a team that started off the season very well. They've kind of faltered a little bit towards the end, but I think they're now starting to get back on track. The analytics really like them, and a team that obviously is always a fan favorite is Wichita State. The Shockers always have a solid team. They're always competing. Kenyon Giles averages 19 a game for them. They have a lot of dangerous players, and I think that's a team that could make a potential run in that American tournament.
Yeah, this American Conference, they're really good all around. I think they have some really good teams. Like you said, South Florida, very talented. They have 3 guys averaging in the teens. I think they're going to play at a high level. Their top 3 teams in their conference, they're on winning streaks of 5 or more. Tulsa's gotten that back up. And Wichita State and South Florida got the bye. I think Wichita State is very talented. Basketball is their main thing at that school. It's kind of faltered off in years past, but they're right back where they want to be, and they have a chance to win this tournament and get back into March Madness and get back dancing. I think they have a great time. I think they have a great chance to do this if they get past South Florida.
Yeah, and I think for Tulsa, one of the more interesting things is they have 4 guys who are averaging over 10 points a night, all 4 of which shoot it very well from 3-ball, and I think that's a very interesting way for a team to play in these sort of tournaments where things can be very volatile. Having that sort of 3-point shooting can always lead to things being very interesting. But a smaller conference I want to talk about is the Big West. I love me some West Coast basketball. I love staying up late at night and watching hoops, and the Big West is exactly that. They have a lot of very solid teams. UC Irvine is always the perennial top of the conference team. UC San Diego had that great team last year, but Hawaii has been a team that's gotten a lot of talk this year, mostly because of a very interesting defense that they play. They absolutely just do not help on defense. One of the more interesting things to watch, they don't help. They just make you beat them one-on-one. And I think depending on the team they might get matched up with, I think that can lead to a lot of very interesting scenarios. And I think this Big West Conference also has a lot of interesting ways it could go.
Yeah, Hawaii, they had a really good season. They're 14-6 in conference. They're 22-8 overall. That's the best record in the conference. 22-10 is the record for UC Irvine. They're always really good at basketball, but like you said, Hawaii, they have an interesting defense. It's led to success. They're 22-8 overall. They're going to compete at a high level night in and night out. And this tournament, it's going to get scrappy. All these games, I think, are going to be close from the bottom seeds up. I don't think there's really going to be any necessary blowouts. And I think these top seeds, UC Irvine, Hawaii, Cal State, Fullerton, usually a baseball school, looking good at basketball this year. I think all 3 of those teams are going to compete highly. And I think the tournament's going to be really fun to watch.
Yeah, those West Coast battles are always a great time, but that is all we have time for that segment. When we come back from commercial break, we are going to talk about the major conference tournaments coming up and starting today. See you after this.
Just mid-yap.
Everyone tells you to think about the future, but we know there's growth in the journey. At ATU, we value this moment because here, nature becomes your classroom. So breathe it in. You've got this. Right here, right where you are. Focus on the now, because our focus is on your success.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We are going to get right back into the action talking about the SEC tournament. The Florida Gators are once again the 1 seed and heavy favorites to win the conference. Is there anyone you could see knocking them off in this tournament, Caden?
I'm afraid not. I think Florida's a really talented ball club. They've looked really good about since midway through the year. At the beginning of the year, Xavier Lee really struggled to find himself. They really couldn't just get offense going. They looked like they were really missing Walter Clayton and some elite guard play because, of course, Thomas Hauff and Alex Condon, they can't really do it on their own since they're more perennial bigs. They can't work on the perimeter as well as they can without an elite guard. But Boogie Flanders came on. Xavier Lee has looked really good. Their guard play has gotten a lot better. They play really good defense. They can score the ball at a high level. A lot of it's on the Australian, Thomas Hauff. It's on if he's going to have a good night. He usually does. And they're coached really well. They made a deep run in the tournament last year. Of course, they won it. They have a really good returning crew. They lost some big people like Walter Clayton, Will Richard, but they've bounced back nicely. And this SEC, they're stacked. There's 5 ranked teams currently. A lot of them are ranked really highly, 15, 17, 22, and 25. That's outside of Florida. Alabama looks really good. Vanderbilt looks better. They've tailed off close to this end of the season. At one point, they were 17 or 18-0, and they've kind of tailed off. Arkansas has, I think, probably the second best or third best player in the country in Darius Acuff, and it's going to be exciting to see how the SEC tournament goes.
Yeah, this one's really interesting. I think the most interesting part about it to me is this bottom half of the bracket. If you'll take a look, there's no real powerhouse team like there is in the top. Obviously, Florida is the best team, but I think Alabama and Arkansas are both fairly beatable teams, especially on a neutral floor. I think a team like Texas or even in Oklahoma could get hot for the weekend and really just wreck things and make themselves a really strong NCAA tournament case. But on the topic of the Florida Gators, Thomas Houck has been one of the best players in the country over the last few weeks. He's playing at a very high level. Boogie Fland recently has done an incredible job of turning defense into offense, jumping, passing lanes, running in transition. He's been very good in that regard, throwing lobs to Houck. They love to throw up a lob to him, especially when the games start to get ugly, which with the Gators they have tended to do so. But for the ACC, which is the next tournament we will go on to, also they have a top dog in Duke where they are clear, heavy favorites, and also just a lot of other teams who might have a shot. Virginia is a team that's been one of the more interesting teams this season. We've talked about them in the past and their varied scoring attacks. But Caden, does anyone stick out to you as a chance to make a run?
I think Clemson could do really good in this tournament. Of course, Duke. I think Duke should have won the ACC tournament. And I think they might win all of March Madness because they are just the most complete team. They look great from top to bottom. Cameron Boozer is the best player in the country. Isaiah Evans showed up and showed out last week in the games they had. The whole roster looks really good, tallest team in the nation. But Clemson, they don't have any really high scores. Their highest point per game score is at 11.7, but they play really good defense. The ACC is really good. It's a great conference. Not as powerful as like the Big Ten or the Big 12 this year, in my opinion, or the SEC. But they're top dog in Duke. They're the best team in the country, and I think they're going to come out of this tournament successful.
Yeah, I think Duke has to be the heavy favorites. I think there are a lot of teams, like, again, in the bottom half of the bracket who have chances to prove themselves. Stanford and SMU are really the two teams that come to mind for me. They could really beat everyone in that bottom half of the bracket if they just have the right good night. So I think they could be very dangerous. But one game that I would be interested in if we do get it would be Florida State versus Duke. Florida State's been playing very well lately. I imagine they're actually probably not very happy that they ended up with the 8 seed and will have to face off with the Blue Devils in the second round should they win. But Robert McCray, Chauncey Wiggins, LeJay Jones are having them play at a very high level right now, and I don't think that is a matchup that the Blue Devils want to see immediately.
Yeah, I think that'll be really interesting. Another thing that's going to be interesting is the matchup with North Carolina. They lost Caleb Wilson, so they could potentially lose one of these early games that they play in. They're going to either play Clemson, Virginia Tech, or Wake Forest. Do you think they could lose one of those?
I think it's very possible. I don't think that any team other than, well, I say any team other than Duke, but even I feel like Duke could just slip up and lose to Florida State. So I don't think there's any real unbeatable team. Obviously, I would be surprised if Duke lost their first game, but especially in that bottom half of the bracket, man, there's just a complete chaotic scenario that could go so many different ways, and I'm really not confident in picking any team to win any amount of games in that. But one conference that I don't think is quite like that is the Big 12. I think there's a much bigger separation between the top teams in the Big 12. Arizona, I think, is obviously playing at a very high level. I expect them to win this tournament. They are obviously the favorites, but not quite as confident about them as I am about Florida and Duke. Caden, what do you think?
Yeah, I think there's a big drop-off in this tournament, and I think all of the ranked teams, they got 5 of them. Lowest ranked out of them is Texas Tech at 16, with the lowest in the conference out of those ranked teams, Iowa State. They haven't played great lately, but I think there's another team that's not ranked. It's going to be your TCU Horned Frogs. They're the only non-ranked team that I think could actually do good in this tournament, and if they win their play-in game, or not really play-in game, but just first game, they'll play against Kansas, and that's a team I think can be beat. I don't think they're the worst team out of those ranked teams. I think it's either going to be Iowa State or Houston. Houston's offense scares me so badly. Their offense is just very underwhelming this year. But I think TCU is a non-ranked team that can make a push, or potentially UCF. But the Big 12, it's going to be very, very interesting to watch.
Yeah, Houston's an interesting one because whenever they don't have Emmanuel Sharp and Kingston Fleming's making those tough shots, the offense can get very bogged down and unreliable. But my TCU Horned Frogs, like you said, are very dangerous. They've won 8 of their last 9 games, many of which against very high-powered teams. And they are absolutely killing teams on the offensive glass, which you would not expect for a team that does not play a guy in their rotation over the height of 6'8". But they are crashing the glass. They have a lot of athletes. David Punch and Xavier Edmonds inside work really hard on both sides of the glass. Xavier Edmonds is now well over 40% from 3 as the starting center. Micah Robinson is a sort of glue guy for them who just holds the team together. It hasn't started for most of the year, but since he's been inserted into the starting lineup, they played super well. Lola Vicious, a shooter off the bench. Brock Harding, the point guard, really pressures the rim very well and kicks it out to those shooters. And the Horned Frogs could be very dangerous in this tournament.
Yeah, last year, I feel like last year in the tournament, the one team we saw dominate early on, March Madness-wise, was the SEC. They won a lot of their early games. So if you had to pick a conference to have a lot of teams make it, like the Big 12, they have 6 teams that are true contenders, or to make the tournament for sure. What's a conference that you see making a push and having teams make it past the first round consistently?
You know, I actually think it's the one power conference who we are about to talk about. I think it's the Big Ten, and Michigan, I think, is right now playing like the best team, or the best team in the country. They have a lot of players who are playing at a super high level. Yaxel Lindenborg had a great game the other night. LJ Kaysen unfortunately suffered a season-ending injury, but this conference, is littered with very high-level teams. Illinois, Nebraska, Michigan State are all going to be expected to make at least a Sweet 16. Wisconsin has been a team that's been dangerous all year long. Purdue obviously hasn't really played up to their expectations, but that's still a very dangerous team in March. Even UCLA has an uber-talented squad that hasn't quite lived up to that all season, but they are playing well at the moment.
I love the Big Ten. I think Big Ten basketball is great, and a team I think that can make a push in this tournament is going to be the Buckeyes. Bruce Thornton is averaging 20 points a game. He can get you a bucket at any moment. I think they can compete at a very high level, and if I'm not mistaken, your championship pick when we did our preseason picks, it was a team from the Big Ten. It was the Purdue Boilermakers. How are you feeling about the Boilermakers?
Not good. I still think that they have the talent to make that sort of run. I don't think they've shown it. They played very poorly at home this season, which is very interesting. Mackey Arena is usually a very difficult place to play for opposing teams. Hasn't really been the case this year. Maybe that's an omen that, like, hey, these neutral site games will actually play great.
It looks like both of us did pretty bad in our championship. I picked St. John's and went, and they look no better.
Yeah, they're looking at like a 5 seed right now.
Yeah, and then they just took that ugly loss to UConn 2 weeks ago now. It was like 40-72.
I don't think they made a field goal in the second half.
Yeah, it was
rough.
It was disgusting. So clearly our championship picks weren't great for preseason, but if you had to make one right now before these conference tournaments, who would it be?
It's tough. To me, I think it's really between Michigan and Duke right now for me. And even with the LJ Kaysen injury, I think I am going to roll with the Wolverines. Morez Johnson, Yaxel Lindenborg, Adai Mara, I think those bigs are really the X factor for them. They are just impossible to guard with that size and athleticism at those positions. And I have a hard time seeing anyone take them down. But I believe that is all we have time for here today. So thank you guys so much for watching, and tune in next week for the March Madness special.